Hey, what's going on, guys? So today we're going to have a discussion about nickels and nickel. So like these are nickels, these are all Canadian nickels, but we're focusing really on the metal nickel, right? The base metal. So a while back I did a video talking about how American nickels, regular US nickels that are in your pocket change, they're actually worth more in metal than they are in money. Right? So that we know they're worth 5 cents in the US, but they're comprised of the metal nickel as well as copper. In fact, the US nickel, it should be probably just called a copper because it's 75% copper and 25% nickel. Canadian nickels are very different. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And later, we'll talk about what this paperwork is underneath these coins. So anyway, a bunch of you made fun of me, which is totally fine. Because I was kind of stashing away US nickels because the thought process at the time was that the American government, it costs more to produce those nickels in the metals they use than they're worth. So I had thought that eventually they would discontinue them. So, you know, somewhat recently I dropped the idea of collecting those nickels. I just cashed them in, used the money to pay some bills. But I kept all my Canadian nickels, and there's a reason for that. Well, there's 2 reasons for that. But first, let's go back to the US nickel. So my thoughts have changed on the subject a little bit. I feel like they wouldn't just get rid of the US nickel. I feel like if they got rid of American coins, it would be across the board. It would be an attempt to move to a digital dollar or something of that effect. So I'm not so concerned that they're going to get rid of just the nickel. I, at this point, feel like eventually they're just not going to have change at all. Everything will be completely digitalized, you know, our bills as well as our coinage. So that's just a non-issue, really. But I did keep all the Canadian nickels I have. Now, the Canadian nickels have a much higher nickel content. So there's a bunch of different bags here, which I'll show you in just a second here, because the designs changed over the years and the metal content changed. But essentially from 1922 to about 1981, give or take, lose a few years. I think from 42 to 46, they did some other stuff. But generally speaking, there was a long span where all these nickels were 99.9% nickel. So unlike the American nickel that a lot of you watching are used to using your whole life, that was only 25%. Whereas these, for the most part, again, there's exceptions, but for the most part here, these are all almost pure nickel, right? So I like them because I like coins. But beyond that, again, the concept is that eventually if the nickel price, the metal price of the metal goes up, these might have more value than they do as coins, just in metal weight. Now, I'm not going to get rich off of this. I'm not going to be able to, you know, buy a fancy car or anything. But, you know, maybe I got 50 bucks worth of nickels here that's going to be actually worth 100 bucks. I don't know. 200 bucks, 500 bucks. Probably not. But it's just kind of fun to do that. I kind of collect all kinds of things. You guys know the biggest focus really is like silver and gold for me physically as far as metals, but I do in fact stack some copper and I stack a little bit of nickel. I think it's kind of cool. So real quick, just to kind of show these here. All right, this is one of the bigger bags. This is from 1965 to 1978. You see the design on there. We have the beaver, all right? I have a personal issue with some beavers lately, but that's for a whole separate video, right? And then on this one we have Queen Elizabeth. So then we have 1963, 1964, all right? We have actually, through the years, there's different depictions of the queen. So this is a much younger queen, but we still have, of course, the beaver on there. A lot of these do, in fact, have the beaver, right? So then we got 55 to 62. These are hexagonal, so they're different as opposed to being completely round. They're hexagons. Their coin's gone through quite a few different changes over the years. So these are before 1953, all right? So on the back, we still have, that's right, the beaver. Then in this bag here, I have pre-1953. Over here, I have one that's actually steel. Between 1953 and 1954, some weren't nickel, they're actually steel. So almost like our steel penny in the US. So that's kind of unique. I only have one of those. These were actually Canadian nickels that I had prior to getting all of these. This is like a really old bag. And that's mainly because when I was looking through all these different types of coins, like coin hunting and stuff, I was looking for silver, but occasionally you'd find, you know, other foreign coins that's mixed into our coinage here in the US because it's essentially similar size. So people might be visiting from the country, they get mixed in and whatever. It's kind of common to find like a Canadian penny or a Canadian nickel. These are actually non-Canadian coins that do have high nickel content. So I just kind of kept it in the same little collection. These are proof Canadian nickels, so they have a shinier polished finish. And let's see, we have 1967. This is actually a different design change. In 67, they did a rabbit, all right, instead of the beloved beaver. All right, so something a little bit different there. And what do we have here? 1979 to 1981, smaller young bust. All right, so this is just a slightly different design on the queen there. So I just had these separated because, again, I'm a coin person. Even though I still have these mainly because they have nickel content, I like to just collect coins, right? It's just kind of fun. So besides investing in physical nickel, which I do, even though it's on a very, very small scale, I also invest in nickel stock. So today's video is sponsored, and that leads me into talking about the stock that I just purchased shares of today, all right, because I see the vast demand for nickel in our future. So the company I'm talking about today is Alaska Energy Metals. You can see there's their website right there. I highly encourage you, just like with all previous stocks I've talked about, to get this presentation packet. This goes over all the nitty-gritty details about the company, their projects, what they're planning on doing. This is really important stuff if you are very interested in investing your money into this. And there's the little tickers so you can find them to invest. All right, for the US viewers, AKEMF is what you're going to be looking for. So there is a ton to unpack talking about nickel and the demand for nickel. I'm just going to touch upon a couple kind of major bullet points for this. These are some of the reasons why I believe in this particular company and why I believe the demand will go up in the future. All right, so to start the story, I kind of have to bring everyone back to 1991. Right? Why 1991? Because that was when the Soviet Union crumbled. Right? That was America's biggest military threat. It was a substantial threat to worry about, right? Once they were gone, the American government, Washington, they kind of focused on hyper-globalization. What they wanted was a free trade market so that, well, there's a lot of reasons why. Not only to avoid wars and conflicts, which causes people's lives and a ton of money, right? But they just wanted to be able to interact with the whole world. It was a global economy. It was a peaceful time, right? There was a bright future ahead. So in order to do that, we had to compromise, of course. And one of the things that we decided to do was outsource a lot of our mining, mostly for cheaper labor. So we had the rest of the world start mining all the raw materials we needed, for building things. So now skip ahead until 2011. Very, very important part of American history is when the fracking industry started, right? And that changed a lot for the mining industry as a whole, right? So we started seeing more of an interest in using fracking specifically for natural gas and oil. So the US is very vulnerable when it comes to some natural materials like lithium, uranium. I did a whole separate presentation talking about uranium. I actually own uranium stocks because I think that's very important. There's going to be a huge demand as time goes on, but also nickel. There's one active nickel mine, and a lot of that production gets exported for the making of stainless steel, which of course a lot of you guys are interested because you might be watching for all the knife content. So I can go on and on about the demand for nickel, which again is why there's an interest in nickel mining companies. But there's actually a really, really good article that kind of breaks it down into detail. If you guys are interested, I'll put a link to that in the description box. But one of the main things in recent years, of course, is the movement into EV, right? Electric vehicles. So in order to make those batteries, the main power source for those vehicles, you need nickel, and you need a ton of nickel. In fact, it's such a concern that Elon Musk has even come out on Twitter in previous years talking about the demand for nickel. He asked mines to produce more nickel. Now, in doing some research on this, it was really interesting to me to find out that 75% of the entire world's nickel supply comes from China, Indonesia, the Philippines, New Caledonia, which I had to find on a map because I didn't know where it was, and Russia. And if you know a little bit about world politics, you'll know that we don't have great relationships with most of these places. So the whole idea here is that the demand for nickel is going to skyrocket in upcoming years, And as the demand goes up, the price goes up. So again, just talking about it a little bit, if you guys find yourself interested in this type of thing, it's definitely worth researching. Again, go to the website. The main website is here. All right, check it out. Read, learn, educate yourself. There's a lot of resources online to learn about the the logistics of all this stuff. It's very important if you're going to invest your money to understand it fully. But I'm convinced. I've done my research on it. Like I said, I've used my own personal money to purchase these stocks. Now, of course, there's many much smarter, more educated people on the subject than myself that believes the demand for nickel is going to go up. The S&P Global Intelligence estimates that nickel demand will go up 23 times by 2035, and not just nickel, other things like lithium and cobalt. Right? We are moving into a technological age, which means batteries and power sources, and we need raw materials to make them. So it's not just the electric, vehicle industry. That's obviously something new. There's going to be a ton of demand in that market, but I mean across the board in industry. So there you go, guys. Just something I wanted to share with you. I love diversity. You guys know I absolutely love silver. I love gold. I like platinum. In fact, palladium is down quite a bit. I love to invest a little bit in palladium, but other things like copper, you've seen me talk about stacking copper. I stack nickel, right? But I also do it, in the digital age just by purchasing some cheap stocks. And there is plenty of people out there that do like stacking copper just for the novelty of it. I know you're not trying to get rich off the stuff. You would need warehouses to make a killing on selling it. But just, it's fun. It's fun to have little challenge coins and little collectible rounds or little bullion bars and stuff. But I'm very curious how many people have physical nickel. Well, you all pretty much have physical nickel. It's probably in your pocket change, but it's just a teeny little bit, right? This is a little bit more, but it's not tremendous. But anyway, just wanted to touch upon that subject. Let me know in the comment section, do you stack base metals? Now, I know a ton of you stack lead and brass. That's another great thing to collect. So I know I'm going to get those comments, so I had to say it. Anyway, that's all. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you have a fantastic day. I do appreciate you watching and enjoying these videos that happen to be sponsored. It greatly helps the channel, so occasionally I do them. But again, this is just stuff that I'm personally into. It always hits home for me. In this particular case, it's something I actually invested in myself, so that's why I'm sharing it. Anyway, hopefully you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow with a brand new video. Take care.